Bom dia. Woo, that one was loud. Sorry about that. If you don't know by now, my name is Deborah Bowen, and I am the president and CEO of the American College of Healthcare Executives. Also, though, this week, until Friday, I am the IHF president, and it's like, this is a super fun event for me because I remember in 2019, I had a conversation with some women from Oman. I don't know if you're here right now, but we decided we needed to do something more for women at the IHF. And every year, our programming has gone a little stronger. And now we are officially, thanks to the support of the IHF Governing Council, the special interest group, so this will not go away. And I'm really thankful to Linda Clark and a lot of the other staff. Linda, thank you for your shepherding us through this, but it's so important for all of us to come together, women and men. I'm glad to see so many men here. I know my mentor was a man, although I also had many helpers like Gail. Gail is actually the one who you'll meet this afternoon who hired me into my CEO role. So again, I think it's important that we all come together, women and men, to really support this important program. I don't have to tell you that women play an important part in healthcare. Hi, Lucy. I didn't even see you there. It's nice to see you. I mean, from medical breakthroughs to scientific discoveries to all kinds of things, advocating for resilience in workforce and the very important work we do every day of serving our patients and the people around us. I don't also probably need to tell you either that we make most of the purchasing decisions, women do. And as you know, we still, even though a lot of the healthcare workforce is women, we still don't hold the positions we need to. I know in the US and probably globally, women make up only 15% of the roles in CEOs. So we need to change that. You need to change that. We all need to change that. And about 25% are in those senior leadership roles. So again, we really want to make sure that internal promotion rates and other types of things make a difference. So today's session is going to be more about culture. If you were with us last year, was anybody with us last year? Oh, great. So last year, we really focused on sort of individual action plans. This year, what we're trying to do is we're really trying to take a deeper dive on culture. I think Muna said it this morning, culture can be great or it can be not so great. And you all know probably what it feels like to work in an organization that doesn't support you or an environment that doesn't support you. That's not a good thing. In the United States, we say culture eats strategy for lunch. That just means it's really, really important. So we're here to try and demystify that. We're here to try and figure that out. You have so many outstanding speakers, but I am only going to introduce your chair. I do want to make a shout out. I am the second IHF president to be a woman. Muna will be the third. Henry is our diverse candidate. He is a male, and he will be president after Muna. But again, none of this work happens without the support of all of us. So I just want you to know the Governing Council's behind you. We also have great partners who you're going to meet in a minute. But again, I'm happy to spend this time with you this afternoon. And let me introduce to you the chair of our session, who was also here last year, an awesome woman and leader in her own right. Her name is Dr. Sausan Abdel Razik, and she's the Chief Academic Officer at Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. Let me turn over the program to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces and actually to feel all of the energy in the room already. So today, I'm sort of master of ceremonies. Really, the stars are going to be you and our speakers. So as Deborah mentioned a second ago, last year we really focused on the individual level, looking at advancing that gender agenda. This year, what we're going to be tasking you to do is look at the same questions, but really from the macro level, right? From the culture, from the policy level, from the organizational angle. And for some of you who have input at the national angle, obviously that would be just as relevant. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that we have a unified idea of what we mean by gender in this context, right? So as you know, this is not just a male and female dynamic. This is about looking at the systems and social structures that define gender across the world. Those constructs then drive power differentials, right, that are not constructive to anybody, not to women, not to societies, not to patients, right? So we're looking at gender from that angle. Right? So I want all our male colleagues here to feel very comfortable. This is not a male or female issue. In fact, as we know, what drives a lot of this major challenge is actually our own implicit biases, which we all hold both as women and men. Right? So that's the premise on which all of today's activities are going to be based. So I'm going to give you a brief structure for the day before I call our speakers and our sponsors. We're going to spend the first 40 or so minutes on some wonderful talks and insights from some of our leaders here today. And then the next 30 or 35 minutes, we're going to get interactive, and we're going to do what we call the World Cafe. Many of you may remember this from last year. You may have some post-traumatic stress disorder on how quickly we had to get it done. Hopefully this year will be a little bit easier. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our sponsors, Frank McKenna and Dr. Jackie Schlafer-Taylor from Alumni Global, without whom none of this would have happened, not last year or this year. So please come on up.
Thank you. Delighted to be with you. And today I want to make a case for data-backed gender equality in hospital leadership. And I guess I want to do that previously as a Chief HR Officer of some hospitals in London, but for the last 17 years working commercially with organisations globally in making senior appointments. So let's start by the current state of gender disparity in hospital leadership. Reputable sources like the American Hospital Association or the Healthcare Leadership Alliance provide ample data on this issue. As of 2021, only 26% of US hospital CEOs were women, and despite women comprising the majority of the healthcare workforce, that number is stark. And furthermore, only 4% of C-suite executives are women of colour, and that is a huge disparity as well. So I think our challenge is less about defining the problem. I think rather it's actively addressing it, and that requires laser focus and a wide coalition to see well-intentioned principles through to clear, meaningful practice. So as a man, as a male ally, I think it's also essential to recognise and acknowledge our own privilege, my own privilege, and a responsibility really to embed change. In a sector still disproportionately represented by men, I think male allies are a crucial partner in this journey towards gender equality. So the purpose of this talk is really to, as I say, to make a compelling case for gender equality in leadership. Let's just start by looking at a couple of themes that really make that case. So if we just think about financial performance, the hard numbers in hospitals, McKinsey's Diversity Wins report found that organisations with gender diverse executive teams are 25% more likely to have above average financial outcomes, financial surplus sustainability. So gender diversity makes solid business sense. If we turn to clinical quality and patient experience, gender diverse healthcare leadership teams are more likely to implement patient-centred initiatives. Specific examples of achieving better patient outcomes and user experience through gender diverse clinical and operational teams is absolutely there. So again, gender diversity provides better patient experience and user outcomes. And if we look through employee engagement, data from the polling company Gallup shows that the strong relationship between gender diversity and leadership at the highest levels, or create the highest levels of performance. So inclusive leadership fosters a really strong positive environment, leading to increased patient satisfaction. And there's overwhelming evidence to suggest that more motivated, engaged clinical teams provide consistently higher levels of patient care and reduced episodes of unwanted patient harm. So let's just work through a couple of things. As an international search and talent firm, we're committed to reducing the gap and really creating inclusive environments. I think there's a couple of things that we really need to think about. The power of disruption. I think recruitment firms supporting organisations can be catalysts for change, bringing challenge and disruption into traditional hiring norms. Our role is not merely to fill positions, and I think there's often a pressure when you're working with organisations, just get the job done, just find that. And I think we know that diverse candidates and female candidates don't jump 2 feet into a process. There's always that sense of needing more time to bring them into consideration. I think what we can do as search providers is to identify untapped talent. We've got the expertise to search beyond normal, traditional pools of candidates. How can we bring new perspectives and experience to the table? I think reducing unconscious bias as well. It's a significant barrier to gender diversity. Recruitment firms can often bring objective data to bear, and I think we really need to sort of strengthen that. And I think the challenge around equal opportunities generally, I think this commitment to achieving fairness is really important. So one way I think that we can do it as an executive search industry, a senior recruitment industry, is thinking about how do we not get on with the process, but we find the right candidates, the right engagement with organisations, and act as challenges around that. I think the data is clear. We need to have a call to action around how we bring disruption through a data evidence base, making it very clear that the benefits outweigh all of the other issues. And I think the work that we'll do today around the World Cafe will be a really important opportunity to bring that together. It's my pleasure to hand over to Jackie Schlieffler-Taylor.
Thank you, Frank, and thanks for the opportunity. Just to briefly address this audience, I'm so delighted and proud to be here. I love that it's a World Cafe because I'm certain that everybody in the room has experiences and wisdom that's going to actually help us co-create where we need to go. And I think you've set the stage very nicely for the rationale, and we know it. I did think I would contribute at this point in time just a story of my own experience that emphasizes the need for policy to drive the change we want versus a reliance on individual action, courage, and competency, all of which I possess. But I was in my own hospital maybe not that long ago, with a tens of millions of dollars decision to be made. And it was a partnership, and to be clear, the person to make that decision would have been myself and 2 physicians who happened to be female radiologists. And we were meeting with a group, an external private company, in a room that it turned out was too small for the party of 22. I think we expected a delegation on their side of about 16 people. And it was a U-shaped table with just enough chairs for 4 people. And I was late for the meeting, as were the 2 radiologists. And when I entered the room, no one created space at the table. No one moved the seat. It was a table of men, it just so happened. And not one person moved. And I, because I was late, let the conversation continue. When the very young radiologist, female radiologist, entered, likewise no one made space for her. And then my colleague, who I subsequently had to let go, entered the room, male, bold, and not brilliant, entered the room, and it was the seas that parted for him at that table. And I'm not kidding. So that, I mention that not because I was offended nobody had the grace to say, would you like to sit down? It just told me how the culturally inbred in my own organization that the people who would hold the decision power couldn't be me, couldn't look like me, couldn't be this other physical being. And after that disaster, I asked the young radiologist, this female, brilliant physician, why she had stood at the, as I had. And you know what she said? Because you stood there. And that was I was so thankful to her because it's the last time I'll do it. I'm a strong person, and she's a strong person. I tell you, policy is going to change this imperative in our system, and we all need it to happen. And I'm so grateful you're here so we can co-create the solutions.
Thank you, Frank and Jackie, both sharing with us the metrics and the importance of those outcomes, as well as bringing that personal piece, which really, I think, brings it home for us. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Sangeeta Reddy. She is the Joint Managing Director of Apollo Hospital Groups in India, one of the largest hospital systems in the world. Please look at the apps for the full bios. So I would like to invite Dr. Sangeeta. Please join us.
Good afternoon. It's always nice to speak to a primarily female audience. It's not just the attention level, the color level is also prettier. But let me begin by saying that I have my own story, and the story is a little different. My father, who founded Apollo Hospital, was a practicing cardiologist in Mass General who went back to India to try and bring healthcare, advanced healthcare to our country. But he dragged with him, unwittingly, 4 daughters who were too young to protest, leaving America. And, we set up a life. And we had heard almost all through, India is a very male-dominated society, at least 30, 40 years ago it was. We always heard, poor Dr. Reddy, he has 4 daughters, kind of implying that, he's missing out. As we grew up, I think my sisters and I unwittingly felt the need to prove that we were as good as a boy, as good as having sons. And today, all 4 of us work in the organization. We have helped him co-found and grow the organization to what we are today. We're over 12,000 beds, one of Asia's most trusted healthcare facility, patients from across the world, many others. But the thing we like most is hearing, lucky Dr. Reddy, he has 4 daughters. Because women have an ability to nurture, to carry forth a mission, to fight less on the big things. We may squabble a little bit on, this thing, but when it really counts, women understand. And I think it's that. So I grew up, we went into the hospital environment. He was a deeply encouraging father. So I never realized that there was a difference. Till I was about 35, 40. I mean, I was maybe the youngest in the room. I was very often the only lady in the room. But it never struck me as deeply as when I went into the Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce. And I became only the third president in 89 years. I was only the 3rd female president. And then it was like, something's wrong. And I went into more and more of data and understanding the the oppression, the lack of opportunity, the making you stand at the back of the room type scenarios that happened again and again and again. And during my presidency, I started an initiative cheekily called the Greater 50, saying we may form up 49% of the population, but we are the Greater 50 in terms of impact. From there, I went on to lead BRICS Women, G20 Women Empower when in India's presidency, and launch initiatives across Apollo hospitals to ensure that this culture of nurturing of women remains. And so I completely agree that policy is critical. I feel even deeper that an appreciation, this eye-opening fact that you make up 50% of the population, you do more than 50% of the work if you account for unpaid labor at home, and yet you're accounting for less than 30% of the decision-making, the positions of power, you're having a 20 to 40% discounting on your wages, multiple inequalities and injustices. And so awareness about this, the commitment to do something about it, policy to change it, and finally, very practically, because, you know, I think that's one of the hallmarks of women is that we're very practical. I launched a series of initiatives because individual initiatives can show impact and make a difference. So I'm going to share just a few of them with you. So number one, at Apollo hospitals, we're very, very clear that we will ask for women in leadership. So currently we have 56% of our workforce is women, 39% of our leadership positions are women, and 55% of our board is women. So we made the Fortune cover for various reasons, but they called this out. And then one of my sisters said, we're not here because we have a women-friendly policy. We're here because we're very good, and having a women-friendly policy enabled us to be very good. So it's a paradigm shift in thinking that you do not do women policy just because it's the right thing to do. You do it because it's the smart thing to do. So now we're training women. We're looking at women in nursing to come into leadership. I created during COVID a program called Angel, which was the advanced nursing guidance and educational learning development program. And we threw it open to public and said, during COVID, all of you realized that nurses were your angels and your gods. And post-COVID, you forgot. And businesses made money, and pharma made money, and doctors also made some money, and hospital, but nurses stayed at the same level. So we launched a powerful initiative. Today I have 117 nurses studying an MBA program in different institutions. These universities gave it to them free. They sponsored them to become leadership. So it's a small initiative, but it's the messaging which is important, that we care, we acknowledge, you are worthy of being leaders, and we need to do more. Across Apollo, there are many. I'm not going to talk more about them. But I do want to share some things that we did during G20, because ladies, and gentlemen, all of you are most likely, your countries are part of G20, and some of these initiatives are globally available. So we launched the G20 initiative of ours, G20 Empower, which is empowering women, on 3 pillars. Number one is education, because we said we need to enable women with the skill to make that difference so that they're not sitting back. And this included, technology education, and I'll share more about that, but assertiveness training, training for women in boards, because we have a policy that you must have, at least one independent women director. But the implementation of that policy is only 18% in our country. It's moved from 7% to 18%, but they say we don't have enough women available. So we need to skill and prepare to step up and take those positions. So education was our first one with many areas. The second one was the entire aspect of entrepreneurship. And we said women in entrepreneurship is a win-win for equity, but also for the economy. And so we got 17 women's parks with allocation. We enhanced these procurement budget in the government. The allocation for women was earlier 5%. We learned best practice from South Africa, I think, who has 40%. And we said, let's move this up. So India has now moved from 5% to 15%, and every women head of Empower is trying to make their governments move up. So policy and initiative hand in hand with an intent or a purpose. And I'm sharing some of these because as you sit down in your cafe and your discussions, is what are the initiatives that you can push, that you can create, which will have impact in the near term as well as the medium and the long term. So education, entrepreneurship, and finally, we spoke about leadership. Because when a young girl or a young boy grows up seeing their mother or other women in the family in positions of leadership, it breaks a mindset that women don't have a seat at the table. And so and this is, our government of India, we currently have 40% of women leadership positions in the rural grassroots level are reserved for women. This is the women panchayat, like a self-governing council. There's a reservation for women in that. The 33% reservation in our House, in the House of Lords equivalent, or what we call the Lok Sabha, which is the Senate, 33% reservation there. And we said these are critical initiatives. We couldn't have moved it without the support of the government, but we spoke up about them because we believe it's important for children and for society to see women in roles of leadership, and that includes corporate leadership. Under the leadership, we also created a framework for, number one, women-friendly organizations. Do you have equal policy? Do you have equal wage? Do you have, excuse me, do you have a creche? For construction companies, do you have toilets? From the practical to the intense, we listed a framework for women-friendly organizations and then made the G20 declaration, which was beautifully done in the city of Gandhinagar, named after Gandhi, who I think is a global leader who really created change. So in Gandhinagar, we took the pledge that we will create 30 by 30. That is 30% leadership positions will be filled in all corporations by the year 2030. And those who have already reached it will then aspire to do more. So I think initiatives, policy initiatives, and proclamations and declarations of what you're looking at are really the guiding light for the change that we need to see in the world. The statistics were beautifully described, and I'm not going to add to a long list of the stats of everywhere that we're underrepresented and the ratio, but I will leave you with one, and that is that the World Economic Forum in their last meeting said that COVID had set back women in terms of their empowerment. If you heard about the Great Resignation, more women resigned than men. If you heard about people leaving jobs, it was more women. It was the women who were called to stay at home to take care of the family, the elderly, the children. So the World Economic Forum said that it'll take 156 years for us to reach equity. And before you get depressed about this, let me tell you that when I shared this in a rural meeting of self-help group of people, women who are doing entrepreneurship, and we shared this statistic, and they said in the local language, and I'm just going to say it in English, but they said, why should we wait? And so I'm calling upon all of you to say, we will not wait. We do not need to wait. And so that's why we're here today. It's a pleasure. It's a privilege. And with a deep sense of partnership and commitment, I'm very happy to be here today. Thank you and namaste. I'm so sorry, I promised to share one thing. Sure. I'm so sorry, and I want to say it before you go into your panels, is that we launched a platform called Tech Equity. So Tech Equity, because the world is changing by digital, the Tech Equity platform is a completely free platform. Please check it out, techequity.com. It's in 120 languages. It's completely free for women. You can self-train yourself from the basics of programming, how to open an email ID for women who don't have one, to how do you learn AI. There's subjects from Microsoft, they're certifiable. There's some cool features. You can finish a course and take a selfie and post it on your... So it is a powerful platform. I request all of you, it is completely free. Adopt it yourself, share it with your team members, proliferate it as much as you can. And the second powerful platform, because I spoke about initiatives, is the mentorship platform. Because sometimes it's not education, it's not money, it's not opportunities, it is a mentor or someone telling you this is what you need. So I'd request all of you who are successful women, please sign up and become mentors, whether you do it on this platform or in some other form. These are two very powerful initiatives that we started during G20 Empower, but they're actually available to the whole world, so please feel free to use them. Thank you, and sorry for that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow, just such a whirlwind. This is such a we're so happy to have someone like Dr. Sangeeta as a speaker, because not only does she come from a specific health system, but she's able to talk at the real macro level around changes in policy and procedure and resources that have been afforded to women, because it is not only just the right thing to do, but the smart thing to do. So having said that, I have the pleasure of inviting our next speaker to the podium. Gail Capizzolo is the Executive Director of the Equity Collaborative, which is an initiative of the Carol Emmett Foundation in the United States. Gail is going to be speaking to us about how to create inclusive cultures to advance the gender agenda and essentially enact policy changes. So Gail, please.
Thank you all. I do have a few slides here if I can get them to work, and if I can't, it doesn't make that much difference. So, can these start? Yeah, see if you can get it. I don't want to take up a lot of time, because the reality is it's about the time and tables that will increase all of our knowledge, and hopefully, and most importantly, continue to think about how we make these changes. The most important thing I want to tell you about is, first of all, I'll give you my story. I am a retired healthcare executive. I've spent over 40 years in healthcare, and almost 30 of those at Yale New Haven Health System. I was blessed with the opportunity to work throughout the United States in bringing about and thinking about gender equity. And when I retired, we started a foundation with a number of friends. Particularly, the foundation was started a couple years earlier, and Joanne was very much involved in the starting of the foundation, the Carol Emmett Foundation, and it was about helping women create opportunities to network, because so often, at least in the United States, the networks that women are in do not afford them the opportunities to get jobs the way the networks men are in. So it was about letting women understand their power and the power of networks they can form. A couple years later, as I was heading toward retirement, we decided to start another initiative, which I lead, and that's the initiative bringing together large healthcare systems to say, wow, this is not a supply problem. We all know it's not a supply problem. It's not a capability problem. It's a structural problem. And so that's what we do in the Equity Collaborative. We focus, everybody in that collaborative and everyone in this room understands, and we've talked about, God, India is such an incredible example of what can be done if you pay attention to the structural barriers. And when you think about it, if we change, it's not about the individual. Of course, We all have to think about forming our networks. We all have to think about, where do I want to be in my career? But the reality is, we also have to think about, how do the organizations that you lead have to change to give those opportunities, to think about the fact that you can have a different culture than you currently have today. And the hows are really, really important. And that's what we focus on in the collaborative I run, and that's what I hope we will focus on today, the hows. Because the hows take the problem and show you how to solve the problem. The very first thing that we have to do is think about, what is it that we're going to measure? Because if we don't measure, if leaders don't talk about it, set the goals, nothing gets accomplished. You've got to shine the light and set the goals to get the accomplishments. So what are the things we should be measuring? We should be looking at our leadership pipeline within our organization. How many women are supervisors? How many women are directors? How many women are senior directors, et cetera, all the way to the CEO and on our board? And how are they moving along that path? Because it's certainly filled in every one of our countries with a lot of women at the entry level, with a lot of women working. But they fall off the rung as they go up. Maybe they choose to leave, but we have pregnancy glass ceilings. All of a sudden, they can't come in back at the rung they were. The expectation is they're going to drop a rung. Doesn't happen when a man becomes a dad. So how do we think about that? So the other thing is retention. How many women are we letting go? Not letting go because they don't perform, but how many are just leaving our organization? What does that say about our organization? Think about the idea of measuring those things on an annual basis, because they will change over time if you're doing the hows. And so what are the hows? The hows, first of all, we've all talked about it. It's policy. Think about your policies. Are your human resource policies thinking about the need that people are entire people? They have social lives, they have family lives, they have work lives. They don't have to be there 24/7 to be a good leader. A good leader is there when it's necessary physically. A good leader empowers people to work, to be excited about work, to do their very best. But they don't have to necessarily be there every day. Do we have family-friendly policies? What are the kinds of policies that we need to think about that we have to change? In our collaborative, when we started, these large healthcare organizations, the vast majority of them only had pregnancy leave. That's what they called it, pregnancy leave or maternity leave. We now call it parental leave. And men have to take responsibility for taking the time off as well as women. And they have to be encouraged to do so. And how do you have to do that? By taking off that glass ceiling when you come back. So those are the kinds of things that we have to, and we really work on. The other thing that we have to do is change the way that we hire people. Change the entire process that really focuses on capability, values, and behavior, and not who knows whom. And that, as Frank said, if it's all about who knows who, and you're looking to have the culture exactly stay the same, and you have a panel to hire someone, which you should never use a panel, but you have a panel to do that interviewing, and there's 5 white men sitting at that panel, who do you think that they're going to hire, even if they have a pool that's diverse? So having pools that are diverse, but also having objective, transparent, and one-on-one conversations to make that point that's about culture add, not culture fit. Another piece that's really important is development. Thinking about the fact that everybody needs development, but how often are women mentored? Mentor being defined as, let me help you personally. I'll tell you a story, you tell me a story. My job is to help prepare you. I have tons and tons, I'm old, I've got 1 million mentees that I work with all over the globe. But those are mentees that I'm really helping them develop their leadership skills. That's different than sponsoring. Sponsoring says, I know you, I trust you, and I'm going to tell the world about you. Women need to be sponsored as well as mentored so that they get the limelight, so that they tell the leaders that they're really capable of doing something. And that's a very, very important. So it's leadership development, it's policies, and last but not least, it's creating organizations that all of you lead that are inclusive, that say it's psychologically safe here. I want my leadership way is like we talked about contemporary leaders. It's asking questions, it's learning from each other, it's saying we make mistakes and truly learning from the mistakes. Look how hard it was for those leaders to sit up there and talk about mistakes. There was only one that was brave enough to do so. You should be thinking and praising the mistakes made in your organization by your team and learning from them. Now, obviously, if I keep making the same mistake over and over, there's something wrong here and I shouldn't be there. But if you're taking risks, calculated risks, you better be making mistakes or you're not growing. Your organization isn't going to grow. So thinking about it in a way that says we can learn because it's about learning. If an employee is critical of something, are you going to shut them down? The vast majority of us do. The first reaction is, wow, you shouldn't be critical. But if you stop and think as a leader, there's maybe something in there. And don't say a statement, ask a question. What made you think about that? Why is that where your head is today? What could we do differently? Because way back in the 80s when we started process improvement for the generic term, we found that the people doing the work know the best way to do that work. And if you think of yourself and your organization to create that kind of inclusive culture, that's how you do it. And then people feel psychologically safe. And we all know if I feel psychologically safe, like I feel in this room because people are looking at me really open, I'll tell you my story. If I don't feel psychologically safe, I'm going to get up here, say my exact thing, and walk away. And that's what you're going to do at work. Keep your head down, do your job, and walk away. And you don't want to work in a culture like that. So we're going to talk about how do you create those inclusive cultures and why they are so important, regardless of where you are, what region of the world you're from. Going to work every day and feeling psychologically safe and excited about being there is what you want your leaders to do and what you want your employees to do. So with that, we're going to turn it back over and head into our small groups. Yes, we are.
Thank you, Gail. Imagine that. People are entire people. What an important concept. Okay, so we're going to get started on the World Cafe. Let me take a brief moment to introduce, for those of you who weren't here last year, it's actually a modified World Cafe. Okay, the idea here is that we've split you into 6 groups. Actually, we have 7 today, which is fine. There are 3 questions that are 3 scenarios that you will be considering. The first is thinking about how do you create inclusive teams, right? How do you create inclusive teams and manage leadership behaviors that propel those types of environments, okay? The second is hiring, selection, retention, and promotion, right? Very, very important. And the last topic is leadership development. How do we develop our female leaders? Now, there are going to be 2 tables at any given time discussing a specific topic. And every table, we've planted a facilitator. The facilitator will lead the discussion with you, provoke conversations. And the idea is for all of you to exchange and get a collective idea of what are the underlying principles behind each of those areas, and what are some of the policy or changes or structural changes that you can make, okay? Each session or each round is going to take 10 minutes. So usually what would happen in the World Cafe is that you would then get up, move to the next table, and tackle the next question. That's not going to happen today because we realize it might be a logistical nightmare. So instead, we're going to have your hosts move from table to table. So you will stay where you are, and you'll get a new host who essentially has a new set of questions for you to tackle. Okay, is that clear? I am really, really strict with time. I should say that. I am really strict with time. 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes, and we are going to move. So let's get started Table number 7 in the middle, Linda will facilitate, and you will tackle, you will not move, Linda will not move, you will tackle all 3 questions together. Facilitators, can you please stand up so that people can identify you? Gail is one, as well as Jackie. They're coming to your tables. Oh, so is Dr. Sangeeta as well. Okay? Okay, everyone. We're all done. It feels terrible, really, stopping these conversations. They call me year after year to come and do this. They think I'm heartless. I think, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask you to wrap up the discussions, because the most important part of today is going to be hearing about what we're taking away from all of this, right? So I'm going to ask, okay. All right, guys, please focus with me on this side. Stay where you are, facilitators. You don't have to go anywhere. You're good. Yeah, you can stay where you are. You're done. You've finished your rotations. Okay, so I'm going to wait for people to focus with me again. All right. Okay, so I want to say one thing before we get started with the report outs. I have to say, every time we do this, it is just so heartwarming to me to watch the level of the discussions. I'm hearing conversations that are so important. I'm seeing people get emotional, and I'm seeing how authentic all of you are being in sharing your thoughts. And I appreciate that. And this year, I'm particularly happy to see our male colleagues and our allies with us at the tables. Really. Hashtag he for she, right? Okay, so I'm going to ask some of our facilitators, not all of them, I'm just going to pick here, to give us, because this is really what's most important. We want to hear, and it's a hard job, what I'm about to ask the facilitators to do, which is to give us the takeaways. So I'm just looking at the names. And for each topic, I have a facilitator. So for the topic of creation of inclusive culture, Jackie, please share with us. Now, remember, I'm giving you 90 seconds. Okay, so one takeaway.
The big takeaway was the groups didn't want to talk about inclusive environments. They wanted to talk about the fact that society has a culture that's set, then organizations have a culture that's set, then individuals, and it could be your immediate boss that has a culture that's set. So even when the policies are in place and they are perfect, we have to focus on the 3% that isn't getting done, instead of looking at a 95% score of inclusion and engagement that can actually materially mean nothing in terms of actually inclusive environments. But this group also would like every single one of them for this to be a 2-day conference.
Yes, I don't want to be doing this next year. I agree. We can't take on these big topics in 10 minutes. We get that. But noted. So I will choose our next facilitator. Thank you. So Frank, can you talk to us about hiring and recruitment and strategy to drive the gender agenda?
So quite a mixed bag, actually. In some sections, really good progress, seeing a lot of female leaders coming through, equal on executive teams, or even majority on executive teams or boards as well. So other examples of a lone female being on board, wanting any other female members of that board to join, in a sense wanting to be different. So we've seen some interesting things there. Also, a view around whether recruiting practices, whether or not they should be blind, whether they should remove all data to remove unconscious bias, as opposed to, well, then that means you don't trust leaders to make the right decisions. So how do you sort of encourage good decision making? How do you sort of train and develop? But also how do you hold to account as well? So this sense of in different territories, different jurisdictions, things working differently. There does seem to be a real appetite, though, for seeing successful female leaders as role models, and then encouraging through sponsorship and empowerment others to come forward. So that sense of visible role models who give confidence to others to feel that they could have a place
Thank you, Frank. I do have the podium, so I get to say something, which is this whole sort of queen bee concept. I have to tell you that's been debunked, really in the literature. Though we do, what really is usually happening is that as women in leadership positions are as assertive as their male colleagues in certain decision making, that is often seen as obstructive, but not the same judgment is passed to their male colleagues in the same positions. So I think it's important for us as women to also think about how do we judge other women, obviously with the intention that everybody is really there to move everyone forward. Okay, so Dr. Sangeeta, please tell us about your topic, which was leadership, advancement, mentorship, etc.
So, as expected, there was a wide range of experiences. Some had formal mentorship, some had not. One of the interesting things that came out, since we're all healthcare people, is that those who had been doctors had professional mentorship as doctors, but not professional mentorship as leaders. So this is something which is in place in the clinical area, but not in place in the leadership. There were comments across the fact that when they sought out mentorship, there was more effectiveness. And so in some future thought, I think I would take an actionable insight, is that we need to build a skill set on how do you seek out your own mentorship. It was also observed that you cannot just assign randomly mentors or sponsors to people. There needs to be a match. So we even came up with the things that's almost like a dating gamification. So choose a matchmaking because mentors need to have an affinity, a mental, cultural, conversational affinity, and then mentorship is more effective. And finally, I'm happy to say that most people had some kind of mentorship. A few called out that they hadn't, and their institution didn't have it. But I think there's an overall recognition of the fact that mentorship and sponsorship are both very critical. And I have a feeling the leaders in this room are going to go back and tell their leaderships that we need to do something.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, is that yeah.
Everybody felt there was an intent to mentor. Those who had been mentored, happy to mentor others. Mentors want to do it, but time is a challenge. Hospital jobs are very,
Absolutely.
very demanding. So do we need to structure official time?
What a wonderful idea. What a thought-provoking idea. I'm going to pass it to Gail, who's going to wrap up the session for us quickly, and then I'm going to come back to the podium real quick with just a few more announcements, and then we can adjourn.
Thank you. Well, every table I was at was really encouraging and so many great ideas. And so I'm thinking that we probably have almost solved these issues. And we're getting awfully close. But I hope that each one of you will take something away that is relevant and actionable, and into your organization begin to think about and then actually start something, whether it's a sponsorship issue or change the way that you're doing hiring, or it's really thinking about how am I acting, am I creating an inclusive culture, and how can my rest of my leadership team do that. Any one of those things, if you'll take it away and make a commitment to say, I'm going to do something differently because I was here today. So thank you all very, very much, and I hope next year we have all day to talk about it.
All right. Closing thoughts here. Just please share any key takeaways that you have from today's session and post them in the app. Hashtag IHF Lisbon. Okay, please. We need to get. This is where we call, sort of giving voice, right? Amplifying what you are all talking about today. Second, I want to remind you about the Eye to Eye Innovation Hub and the Innovation Ignite talks at the exhibition hall at 4:20. Tomorrow's plenary will start at 9. And then lastly, but definitely not least, please sign up to the Women's Leadership Forum. okay? We need more people like you, and I mean also our male colleagues here, by the way. It is not exclusive to women. And bring more of your friends next year. But please do sign up. We do need your following, your thoughts, your engagement, because this is how this will grow. So I thank all of you for your time today. I'm hoping everyone, yes, did you want to say something? Yeah, please, please.
I'm Linda Clark, the Director of Professional Development for IHF, and Ilona Johnston is our program lead for IHF for the Women Leadership Forum Special Interest Group.
Yes.
So
Woo!
So we will, thanks to our board, our governing council, we will be more formal going forward.
Yes.
We took your names and your emails so we could get you on the list. So we will be doing more things together, and we'll need more involvement. 'Cause
Yes.
women in the small group can't do it all.
Yes.
Emails would be great.
And finally, I'd like to shout out the young executive leaders today at every single table who sat there and took notes of all of your brilliant thoughts. And the idea is hopefully we can take that and have that become either a white paper or something that we can take away from this. Okay? All right, thank you. Have a great afternoon.